For the second time this week, a moose has been spotted in a densely populated southern Maine neighborhood.
While this sighting may seem unusual, biologists say it's not, and authorities are cautioning people to give the moose some space.
A DNR researcher says one of Minnesota's most iconic animals is still in great danger.
90%. That is the number that flashed on the screens of biologists in Maine. A 90% mortality rate. In a single winter, 9 out of every 10 moose calves in a massive study area simply vanished. The dots on their tracking maps went still, one by one, until the forest fell silent. Think about that for a second. 9 out of 10 babies wiped out. This is the domain of the moose, a true titan of the north. They stand 6 feet tall at the shoulder, weighing over 1,000 pounds. They are tough. They are resilient. They are survivors of ice ages. They are the undisputed monarchs of the Northwoods. But starting in the early 2010s, a feeling of dread began to creep in. The woods were becoming a graveyard. Hunters found carcasses where there shouldn't be any. Hikers reported eerie, pale animals, ghost moose, stumbling through the trees, their skin visible through patchy fur.
There's a bull and a cow on the road. They're the biggest things I've ever seen. This is insane.
These were just whispers, rumors on the wind. But they were the first clues in a biological murder mystery. The monarchs of the forest were dying, and no one knew why. But when a team of experts decided to track the population with scientific precision, they stepped into a nightmare they couldn't have prepared for. The biologists at the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife decided it was time to stop guessing. They launched a major study in a remote, rugged area known as Wildlife Management District 4, a place that should have been a moose paradise. Their plan was simple. They captured 70 moose calves, animals born just the previous spring. They fitted each one with a high-tech GPS collar. These collars would ping their location to a satellite, letting the team watch their every move from the safety of their offices. It was supposed to be a standard study on survival rates. But then the dots in the map started to stop moving. It began as a trickle. A single ping would go flat. A motionless collar usually means one thing: death.
In 5 of those 6 years, we had more than half of our collared calves die from winter ticks. More than half.
This is normal in the wild. Winters are hard. But the notifications didn't stop.
Cantor gets a text alert that it's likely dead. In the hour that we were at his office, he received 2 of those texts.
They became a drumbeat of disaster. It was a digital slaughter. By the time the snow melted in May, the team looked at their data in pure disbelief. Out of 70 calves they had collared, 60 of them were dead. Let that number sink in. 60. The forest hadn't just been quiet. It had been a killing field. They had the data, now they needed the cause. And the truth they would pull from the snow was more grotesque than any predator. The biologists put on their boots and went out into the silent woods. Their mission was to recover the collars and perform necropsies, animal autopsies, to find the killer. They expected to find signs of wolves or perhaps a new mysterious virus. What they found was pure nightmare fuel. The calves were emaciated. They were little more than skeletons wrapped in skin. But it wasn't their bones that told the story. It was their skin, or rather, what was crawling on it. Imagine walking up to a carcass and seeing the fur move, not from the wind, but because the animal is covered in a living, crawling carpet. We're not talking about a few bugs. We're talking about tens of thousands of ticks on a single animal. This was the work of the winter tick. When they examined one 12-year-old cow, they simply stopped counting. The numbers were too high to comprehend. She was carrying over 90,000 ticks. 90,000. If you scraped them all off, they would weigh as much as a heavy winter coat. But they weren't dead weight. They were an army of vampires, and their food source was blood. This moose didn't starve because there was no food. She starved because she was being drained dry. Her body had burned through every single ounce of fat, desperately trying to replace the blood she was losing. But how could a creature this small bring down a giant? The answer lies in a feeding strategy straight out of a horror film. This isn't your average dog tick. The winter tick is a biological weapon designed by nature to take down a giant. And it all comes down to a brutally efficient life cycle. Most ticks are picky eaters. They jump on a mouse, then a dog, then maybe a human. It's a hard life. The winter tick says, forget that. This parasite is a one-host tick. It puts all its hungry babies on one moose. Here's how the nightmare begins. In the fall, tick larvae, each the size of a pinhead, hatch by the billions. They don't wander alone. They crawl up blades of grass and shrubs and form what biologists call questing clusters. Imagine a ball of thousands of tiny interlocking legs all waving in the air, waiting.
They can sense the heat and the carbon dioxide from the breath of a passing animal. Now, picture a moose. It's a walking school bus, pushing through the very vegetation where these clusters lie in a wait. As the moose brushes past, the cluster explodes. In a single terrifying second, tens of thousands of larvae transfer from the plant to the animal. A single moose can pick up 50,000, even 100,000 ticks in one unlucky stroll. They latch onto the fur and crawl down to the skin. But here's the kicker. They don't bite and fall off. They are moving in for the winter. But getting on the host was only the beginning. The real horror started once this army of vampires settled in for a long winter's feast. Once on board, the feast begins. The ticks dig in. Over months, they grow from larvae to nymphs to adults. Each time they molt, they need more blood. A lot more. Let's do the math. It's terrifying. A single engorged female tick drinks about 1 milliliter of blood. That's just a drop. But multiply that by 50,000 or 90,000. We are talking about liters of blood. For a calf, this is a death sentence. It's like a human being forced to donate blood every single day for weeks with no way to recover. The moose becomes severely anemic. Its organs turn pale from lack of blood. But the blood loss is only part of the story. Imagine the torture. Imagine having 50,000 bugs biting you at the same time. The itch is maddening, unbearable. The moose stops eating. It spends all its time scratching. It uses its hooves, it rubs against trees until its fur comes off in great bloody clumps. And this is the final fatal blow. A moose's coat is a marvel of insulation, designed to keep it warm in -40-degree winters. By destroying its own coat, the moose is signing its own death warrant. Now it's not just bleeding and starving, it's freezing to death. This is the origin of the ghost moose, a pale, patchy specter in the woods. It's not a magical sight, it's a walking corpse. So why now? The winter tick is a native species. Why has it suddenly become an apocalyptic force? The key wasn't just in the forest, it was in the air. The winter tick is an ancient enemy, but it's an enemy that has just gained a terrifying new advantage. For centuries, its population was kept in check by a simple, powerful force, the brutal Maine winter. In the past, winter came early. Hard frosts in October, a deep, lasting snowpack by November. This was a natural reset button. Snow would bury the questing tick larvae, trapping them. Cold snaps would kill millions before they ever found a host. But the climate in Maine is shifting. The average temperature has risen several degrees. That might not sound like much, but in the world of parasites, it's a revolution. Fall is now longer and warmer. The snow arrives later, sometimes not until December or January. This gives the tick larvae a massive window of opportunity. Instead of having a few weeks to find a host, they now have 2 or 3 months. The door to the all-you-can-eat moose buffet has been left wide open. Science confirms this. Warmer falls directly lead to more ticks. It's a simple, deadly equation. A warmer planet equals more ticks. More ticks equal dead moose. But the warming planet only opened the door. We accidentally rolled out the red carpet, creating a moose population that was a sitting duck for this new threat. The other piece of this puzzle is the forest itself. Northern Maine is logging country, and when you cut down trees, what grows back first? Shrubs, saplings, willows, a moose salad bar. In the 1990s, logging created a paradise for moose. Their population exploded. In some areas, they were packed together, up to 40 moose in a single 10-square-mile area. For a tick, this is heaven. High density means easy transmission. We had built a tick factory. The moose were trapped. They went to these areas for the food, but they walked into an ambush of millions. Faced with this collapse, biologists realized they had to act, but the solution they proposed was one of the most controversial in wildlife management: a controlled hunt. The logic is grim but simple. It's called density dependence. If too many moose cause the tick explosion, then fewer moose might break the cycle. If a questing coster of ticks waits on a branch and no moose walks by for months, the ticks die. The idea is to sacrifice some to save the species. To test this, the state launched an experiment. In one zone, they issued more hunting permits for moose. The goal wasn't to wipe them out, but to thin the herd. So we are left with an impossible question. To save the moose, must we kill the moose? The answer to that question is redefining wilderness itself. The early results from the experiment are both promising and haunting. In the areas where the moose population was reduced, the surviving animals were healthier. They had fewer ticks. The calves had a better chance. The grim logic worked. But this is a bitter pill to swallow. It means that to have a healthy moose population, we might have to accept having a smaller one. We are forced to choose between a forest full of dying ghosts or a quieter forest with thriving, healthy giants. This situation in Maine is not an isolated tragedy. It is a warning, a blueprint for how climate change acts as a force multiplier, turning native species into weapons of mass destruction. It shows that the consequences of a warming world are not always about rising seas. Sometimes they are about silent, bloody forests. The story of the Maine moose is a test of our willingness to make brutal choices to fix problems we created. The fate of this iconic species now hinges on the most difficult decision we may ever have to make. The silence in the forest is getting louder. And as this invisible war spreads north, we have to ask ourselves one final, haunting question. Are we willing to become the gardeners of the wild? To call and to kill, all in the name of saving what we love? The future of the North Woods depends on our answer.